Okay, folks, welcome. Another Wednesday. Jason Murphy, Against the Stream, a Buddhist meditation group. We have some folks from some East Coast, some Northern California. Where else are you guys from? Jonathan, where are you at? Bend, Oregon. Jonathan's from Bend, Oregon. We got Karen? Where are you, Karen? Karen, you're in Northern California. You're still Santa Clara area?
I actually live in Mountain View.
Oh, Mountain View, yeah. All right. Well, welcome. You're close to Gil Fronsdale's place. He's a good guy. IMC, Insight Meditation Center. I mean,
that would be true.
It's not against the stream, but you know.
Well, I kept going to Dharma Punx in San Jose because those were my people.
Good. Yeah. I remember when me and Stephanie started that group 20 years ago. All right, here we go. Thanks for sounding off, those of you. And then in the room in the house, we got some folks and my Venice and Los Angeles crew. We're going to sit for a bit, contemplate some Dharma. Yeah, so why don't we just find a posture that's workable, sustainable. Just kind of settling in. And as I often like to do, allow a few moments to just check in with the mind, do a mindful check-in. Check in with the body, kind of acknowledge anything that might need to be acknowledged, thoughts, feelings, sensations. And then in some way, see if you can kind of let go of the past and the future. Let go of the stories. And just arriving here in this body. Perhaps set the intention for the sake of meditation. There is nothing worth thinking. So thoughts will come, stories will come. We can just see them as thoughts, see them as stories. And then aim the attention back to this present time experience. So for the sake of meditation, there's nothing worth thinking. So it's always useful to find a point, an anchor. The three general suggestions are breath, body, and sound. Choosing whichever feels easiest to connect to. Breath is generally tip of the nose or rise and fall of the belly. Sound, the arising and passing of different sounds without getting lost in the stories about sound. And then body, some kind of sweeping head to toe, or just general awareness of the body sitting. Choosing one for a few minutes, working with the instructions of aim, connect, and sustain. Seeing if you can sustain your attention on this present time experience, breath, body, sound. Of course, whenever the attention wanders off, just acknowledging where it's gone, future or past. And in some way, aim the attention back with a sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind. Collecting the attention, keeping a bit of a narrow focus on the meditation object. again and again. Whenever we recognize that the attention has wandered off, with that sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, is aiming the attention back. Breath, body, sound. Perhaps opening to the feeling tones. The subtle knowing of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral as awareness comes into contact. The meditation object, our thoughts, stories, sensations, perhaps emotions that are arising. Before aiming the attention back, acknowledging the feeling tone that's present, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Each time we recognize that the attention has wandered off, we can delve deeper and deeper into the present time experience, letting go of distraction, stories, a little inspiration from the Buddha. The mind, hard to control, flighty, lying where it wishes, one does well to tame. The disciplined mind brings happiness. The mind, hard to see, subtle, alighting where it wishes, the sage protects. The watched mind brings happiness. The invitation to stay connected to the meditation object, breath, body, or sound, yet turning the attention towards, perhaps the contents of the mind, what's happening, like clouds through the sky, seeing them without grasping. All right. So we'll open up for some comments and questions in a bit. I just want to jump right in and focus a bit on a topic. I don't know. I generally, when I do a meditation like this, I point to a experiential practice that then we can kind of unfold or unpack. And this starts with a bit of a story. So I had a meditation teacher. His name was Robert Hall. And I just really dug his style. He was kind of like one of those 70s kind of throwback, kind of hippie, openly gay Dharma teachers, who was a retired psychiatrist and trained with Fritz Perls, and was like in the kind of Esalen movement. Those of you on the East Coast, Esalen is like, it's like Omega Institute or something like that. This kind of Northern California yoga, massage, kind of hot springs, mind expansion kind of deal. And so I got a chance to train with him and interview with him. And he died probably 2 or 3 years ago. He was actually living in Todos Santos, Mexico, and I got a chance to visit with him in Todos Santos maybe 5 years ago. And what was significant about my interaction with him and my practice with him is that he gave me this understanding that we're not our thoughts and that we're not our feelings. And he basically kind of said, at one point during this retreat that I was on with him, have you figured it out yet? Have you figured it out? And I was like, I've figured nothing out, except for that my mind is out of control, doing whatever it wants. And my emotions were, there was all of this kind of turmoil and things coming and going, and I would get some respite, and then, just the intensity of what happens during meditation. And he said, yeah, have you figured it out yet? And I was like, no. And then he just very simply said, we're not our thoughts. We're not our feelings. So immediately in my mind became, well, what are we? What's left? We're not our thoughts and we're not our feelings. And so I like this quote from the Buddha, because I feel like it also kind of points to, the mind, hard to control, flighty, alighting where it wishes, one does well to tame. The disciplined mind brings happiness. The mind hard to see, subtle, alighting where it wishes, the sage protects. The watched mind brings happiness. This is from the Dhammapada, thought to be the eloquent teachings of the Buddha, kind of the poetic teachings of the Buddha. And probably one of the, besides the book Siddhartha, which isn't even really about the Buddha, the Dhammapada was probably the first Dharma book I really read, and still read today. Anyway, just to kind of point to that, like in mindfulness, we're not trying to stop our minds from thinking, nor are we trying to engage with it as an enemy. And this is what I've kind of contemplated after having this initial kind of insight with Robert, that instead we're trying to befriend our thoughts or overcome our preoccupation with them. So there's this kind of not the enemy, like thoughts, the mind. The same mind that causes us suffering is the same mind that causes us freedom. It's a perception shift that allows us to be able to wake up, that allows us to be able to find freedom. And in the beginning of my meditation practice, I was definitely either trying to stop my mind from thinking because I thought that's what meditation was, or I was engaging it as an adversary, because you may have heard, like, my mind is like living in a bad neighborhood, like you never know what's going to go down, right? That was definitely true for a while. But once that shift happened during this retreat I was on with him, and then subsequent teachings that I had with him, that's where I can begin to kind of see that thoughts and feelings are just arising and passing away. And that, there was another teacher that told me once on a retreat, or told the group, if you're, so preoccupied with your thoughts, just imagine that they're from the person behind you and that they're just flowing through you. So these thoughts are just moving through, and they're not even yours. They're just thoughts that are coming from nowhere, going nowhere. They're just passing through. So that kind of vision of like clouds through the sky. It's really helpful, I think, because it allows us to get that distance, that kind of not subjective but objective view of seeing thoughts and feelings. Because we all have thoughts and feelings. They come, they go. Some of us have a better relationship with them than others. Some people, don't mind, having a feeling, allowing the feeling to pass away, change. So I just think it's worth kind of pointing to that, mindfulness is this kind of clear, silent awareness that we are thinking, that thinking is happening. And often our thoughts are based in kind of rehashing or rehearsing, worry or regret, pleasure or pain. So I like that, another teacher gave me that instruction, right? For the purpose of meditation, nothing is really worth thinking about. Nothing is worth grabbing hold of and, Rubik's cubing it, and I don't know if you're like me or your mind is like my mind at all, but sometimes I get a little caught up in, and I finally quieted my mind. Now's a good time to really chew on a problem. Like, okay, we're busy all day long, and then we go to, just like for some people that are very, very, really anxious prone, they finally lay down after distracting themselves all day long with a million things they have to do, and they're getting ready for bed, and then the mind just kind of becomes unruly, right? And that's that rehashing and rehearsing. So learning, to let go of thought is a practice of non-grasping. Learning to, it's not about pushing it away, right? But learning to see, okay, here's a thought. It's come from where? I have no idea, but all of a sudden I'm really interested in it. A past thought, a thought about the future, what's going to happen, what's going to happen an hour from now, dinner, yesterday when I was 8, and it's just kind of random. So the idea is that our thoughts, they run away with us. There's this Zen master named Kosho Uchiyama, and he wrote a book called Opening the Hand of Thought. And he described this kind of process like this. He said, you might try looking at all the stuff that comes up in your head as just a secretion. All your thoughts and feelings are a kind of secretion. It is important for us to see this clearly. I've always got things coming up in my head, but if I tried to act on everything that came up, it would just wear me out. And when I think of secretions, I mean, there's lots of things we can think about secretions. Sweat is a secretion. Saliva is a secretion. You know, the pancreas secretes insulin. You know, there's so much. The body has this, you know, kind of the autonomic system that is just on its own, kind of, you know, functioning, and we don't really have to put much attention to it, or zero attention to it. And so in this frame, it's like the thoughts are secretions too. They're just a byproduct of the brain. And what's the brain's function but is to perceive through the six sense doors. So this is consistent with the teachings of the Buddha, you know, regarding the aggregates, right? So perception and mental formations and consciousness, and that there's kind of wholesome and unwholesome thoughts, or skillful and unskillful thoughts, thought trains, mind moments, mental formations. What is his name? Darn it. Tanasato Bhikkhu, down in San Diego at the Metaphorist Monastery. He's the abbot there. He calls this process mental fabrication. And I just love that, because what is the mind doing besides fabricating, you know, so many stories and whatnot, based generally on the six sense doors and perception. So all of this, you know, it includes memory and can lead to grasping or aversion, which results in suffering in some way. And of course, like I was just saying, you know, the eye sees form, which perception leads to some kind of formation of thought. So it's just this process, right? The thoughts we have, you know, are in response to seeing or hearing or tasting. We may go, you know, far beyond the kind of form or color that is present, right? So we have these perceptions, these stories that we create. So I'm not going to go on about that. I feel like I gave that a pretty good example, but there is another, just to kind of, if we can pull back and use that observational view, we can begin to see, okay, what is happening here? What's coming to, you know, what's coming into the mind? And what's it based on? So if we're able to kind of use, you know, access the perceptual database, which is basically our past experiences, and we can kind of begin to identify, oh, this is fear, or this is anger, or greed, or prejudice, or some kind of delusion, or even advertising slogans, or you know, songs. Have you ever been sitting in meditation and just have a song pop in your mind? I've had that happen quite a few times. And sometimes the songs are just random, and sometimes there's like, oh, there's a theme to the song that is related to the thoughts or the feelings I was having. But it's just a process. You know, the top 10 tunes of the mind, you know, these are kind of the, you know, the worries, the regrets, the, you know, the what ifs. And we can begin to see the top 10 tunes and identify them, and then let them go, and then kind of, you know, just pull back, have a little observational view. I mean, it takes some work. You know, I'm not saying that this just happens right away. For some people, it happens pretty quickly. For some, pretty slowly. I mean, it just kind of depends. But my experience is the deeper that you can delve into sustained practice, in other words, either, you know, setting a time per day, every day, meditating, or going on, you know, longer retreats, you know, longer than a weekend, maybe 5 days minimum, 10 days. A lot can happen in 10 days. I had a psychotherapist, a Buddhist psychotherapist friend of mine. She was like an elder, you know, she was in her late 60s at the time. And I was going on a retreat, and And she said she had been on many Vipassana retreats, and she said to me, she said, "Oh, you're going on a 10-day meditation retreat?" I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "Oh, that's good. That's like 10 years of therapy." Just like 10 days alone with your thoughts and breathe and walking and sitting and yoga, in silence is like 10 years of working stuff out, therapeutically. Probably not the best thing for a therapist to say, but it's helpful nonetheless. Have you noticed that the mind can be like a movie, right? That there's like these stories. Sometimes it happens. I think people notice it in dreams, right? That it's like a story that gets played out, and where that the mind produces, directs, we star in, and we're the critic of, right? And so sometimes just being able to kind of see that can be useful. The Buddha used this word called papancha. Papancha means proliferation of thought, and you'll notice it, and you can begin to notice it during meditation practice. Especially if you're tuning into what we were talking about tonight, the feeling tones. So you can begin to kind of, maybe you're lost in some kind of thought, some story, or in the past or in the future. And, the important thing is, I always talk about, and Noah does too, to not judge ourselves for that. Like, that's just the mind being flighty, alighting where it wishes, as the Buddha was describing. Acknowledging that, then we can begin to kind of investigate, and perhaps investigating, okay, what does it feel like? Is it pleasant? Is it that I want to feed, right? Is it a pleasant sensation? And that could be pleasant, like calm, like relaxed, like joyful, or it can be pleasant in that kind of the more unwholesome, like feeding kind of fantasy or greed or what if scenarios. But basically, compulsive thinking is one of the things that we're very much addicted to. So if this happens and we begin to focus on body sensations, then once we kind of recognize the papancha, and we begin to bring the body, the attention back, or the focus back on body sensations, and just kind of ask yourself, okay, how does it feel in the body right now? How does this thought feel in my body? How does this feeling, this emotion, what is the Vedana? What is the feeling tone that's present? And so that allows us to be kind of grounded back into, the here and now. And so there is, it's a very well-known practice or system called RAIN that I like to utilize to help people with this form of investigation. So I'll go through it. And so first of all, I think the Tara Brach popularized this acronym RAIN, which is, recognize, accept, investigate, and non-identify. But my understanding, the way the story goes, is that there's a teacher on the East Coast, actually. Her name is Michelle McDonald, and she actually is the one who created or came up with RAIN. And she probably still teaches at IMS out there, or IMC. I think it's IMS, one of those insight places. So anyway, recognize. So recognize what? Recognize the thought as it's happening. Once we've recognized, we come back. That's talked last week or the week before about that mindful moment, when you recognize that the attention has wandered off the present time experience and ends up being kind of off somewhere else, future, past, rehashing, rehearsing. So recognizing the thought, recognizing feeling, tone, and or emotion that's happening, which almost immediately brings us back. And then there's the second stage is acceptance. So this isn't like necessarily accepting kind of like what happened in our lives, but accepting that there is thought, that there is feeling, that there is emotion, there is content, accepting that that's happening, that that's happened, right? Accept the thought, the feeling, or the emotion as it is. I feel like so much of what gets misunderstood as meditation practice or Dharma practice is this distraction or this avoidance. Avoidance can be a real big problem. What I've noticed is that that's the opposite of what the Buddha is teaching. The Buddha is teaching to be present with what is as it is, in every moment. So this acceptance is kind of landing back into, okay, the mind is wandering, or there's a hindrance, there's tension, or there's sadness, or there's anger, and to learn to accept that as it is and not try to push it away, and also not grasp onto it. So the next step is it's another layer of landing in the present time, which is to investigate. Investigate what? Important distinction, not to investigate mentally, not to feed the story, but actually investigate the body. How is whatever's happening in the mind, whatever the content is, affecting the body, right? So how does this feel in my body? Can I locate a particular place that I notice anger or sadness or fear or anxiety? Super helpful. And then even not can I make it change, but can I allow it to change? Or can I see that it's just another one of these processes that are moving through our experience? So the last thing is to non-identify. This concept is challenging for most people that I share this with. You guys have all been kind of hearing Dharma, you've been practicing meditation for a while, so you understand that what we're talking about here is, not self, is not identifying with our thoughts, with our feelings, with our stories, with our history as me or mine, as much as possible. So seeing the ever-changing reality of thoughts and emotions. This is the non-identification. This is the instruction that teacher gave me when I was on a meditation retreat and said, if you're having a problem with what's coming up in your mind, just imagine that all these thoughts or these feelings came from the person behind you and that they're just moving through. And it kind of helps to, like, it's not mine, it's not me, right? And of course, we do identify with our stories. It's part of, the misunderstanding of who we are, right? Is that, yes, we have a personality. Yes, we have experiences that we've experienced. And so much of the suffering that I witness and I in others and experience in myself has to do with this kind of when we identify with it as me and mine, particularly if it's the kind of the negative concepts, the limiting core beliefs that I like, this kind of not good enough or not smart enough or I can't do it or I'm helpless or powerless, or there's all these kind of common themes that what I was pointing to earlier as the top 10 tunes. And one of the ways that I like to even think about this. This was given to me again. Almost everything that I say, I've learned from other people. There's this one of the ayahs. I think it was Ayah Sentusika, but it might have been. Ayah is a female monk, a bhikkhuni, and it wasn't Ayah Sentusika. I can't remember. It'll come to me, her name. But so she basically described, what happens in the mind. She was like, there's, conscious, there's subconscious, and then there's unconscious. So kind of 3 layers of the mind. And where our conscious thought, our conscious interaction with the world is that kind of perceiving, is kind of doing and seeing and, identifying. And that's kind of happening all day long. That's the busyness of the mind. And then there's this subconscious content, which is kind of more feeling tone oriented. And also it's like the energy that kind of drives us throughout the day. And that very often is connected to what's called the unconscious. In Freudian psychoanalysis is called the unconscious, and which is basically what we're not aware of. And what we're not aware of is often the motivating themes are these limiting core beliefs of I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm a bad person, or, whatever, I'm an idiot. There's so many. I'm helpless. I'm a victim. There's usually an I and an am kind of attached to it. Right, so that's part of what's being talked about here in this kind of non-identify, is as much as we can to not identify with the past and our story that leads to grasping and suffering, holding on to old ideas, which hopefully creates new ideas. So, I'll open up for some questions about that in a minute. I just want to kind of leave us with also a teaching, and this is kind of a practice from Ajahn Sumedho. Ajahn Sumedho is the kind of, I don't know, for lack of I call him the godfather of our lineage. He's the big kahuna. After Ajahn Chah, he's basically one of the first Western teachers of Ajahn Chah, and he's an American that after the Korean War, he went to Thailand. And then he just stayed in Thailand. Like he just became a monk, and stayed in Thailand. And so all throughout the Vietnam War, all throughout, all of these, he's been in Thailand. And, he's traveled around the world as well. And I've met him a few times, spent some time with him in Thailand as well. And a couple, sometimes, in December, all of the monks in the Thai forest lineage go to Thailand. They stay in Bangkok, and then they go up to Udon Ratchathani, where the Wat Pah Nanachat is. That's the Western monastery. And so every once in a while we go there. Noah and I have been there a few times, and we talk about actually bringing a pilgrimage of a bunch of people there to go and visit, kind of check out Thailand and do some retreats and stuff. But anyway, so Ajahn Sumedho has this to say that I think relates to this kind of we're not our thoughts and we're not our feelings. And this is from Intuitive Awareness. It's a book that Ajahn Sumedho wrote. Awareness is your refuge. Awareness of the changingness of feelings, of attitudes, of moods, of material change. Stay with that, because it's a refuge that is indestructible. It's not something that changes. It's a refuge that can be trusted in. This refuge is not something that you create. It's not a creation. It's not an ideal. It's very practical and very simple, but easily overlooked or not noticed. When you're mindful, he says, you're beginning to notice it's like this. So this is, basically our present time experience of, can we acknowledge, this is kind of, I think, using rain in a very succinct way. Right now, it's like this. The attention wanders off. We're noticing anger. We're noticing joy. We're noticing, whether it's negative or positive emotions. And we can begin to just acknowledge, right now it's like this. and then investigate into that, and then non-identify with it. So that was helpful. I really like some of the quotes that I mean, obviously, otherwise I probably wouldn't have quoted them. But I'll open up for some questions now, or if you have some reflections based on what was talked about. And you can feel free to put a question in the chat. If you don't feel like, you can always raise your hand. And just so questions, clarity about the practice, or anything else that came up for you. All right, good. Guess you guys understand the concept, right? Putting it into practice. Yeah. Okay, well, if there isn't any thoughts or comments, we can just, we got a little bit of time. We can do a little bit more meditation. Maybe we'll do an extended either loving kindness, or or even just practice with rain a little bit. We could also do that. All right, last chance. No pressure, but I do like to answer questions. There is no wrong questions. One gains insight by investigation.
So this is not a question, but I want to thank Michael, because he just put up a posting for how to find a PDF. And this past week I read Finding the Missing Piece, which Michael had recommended, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you. Keep pointing us towards good things.
Yeah, awesome. Is that the, hey Mike, is that the Ajahn Sumedho book? Intuitive Awareness?
Yeah. Yeah, once you mentioned it, I looked it up and just put it in the chat box.
Awesome. It's a great book. Intuitive Awareness, and there's also The Sound of Silence. Those are two of his kind of classics, some of his earlier books. But yeah, I definitely recommend, and I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you, Michael, for doing that little bit of research and being my backup, my support. I appreciate that, and obviously so does Karen and others. So cool. Okay. Well, let's just take another minute or two. Just sit in a way that is relaxed and alert. Just allowing the eyes to close, and just kind of allow the thoughts. Just allowing the thoughts to kind of, this is part of the investigation. Just, okay, what is the Dharma? What is the Dharma here? And I'll read the Sumedho quote again. Awareness is your refuge. Awareness of the changingness of feelings, of attitudes, of moods, of material change. Stay with that, because it's a refuge that is indestructible. It's not something that changes. It's a refuge that can be trusted in. This refuge is not something that you create. It's not a creation. It's not an ideal. It's very practical and very simple, but easily overlooked or not noticed. When you're mindful, you're beginning to notice it's like this. So maybe just work with that a little bit with each breath. Right now, it's like this. And seeing what comes up. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, even stories, hindrances. Just want to thank you for being part of this group, supporting our Sangha and our community and our practice. And just to let you all know that, we, of course, we uh, survive on the donation of those who attend. So whether you're in person or online, we have whether it's donation through the Against the Stream, which Mike will probably put up because he's good like that, or you can always Venmo. Of course, any donation is tax deductible. And if you go to the website againstthestream.com, there's actually a place where you can become kind of a monthly donor, and that really helps us be able to kind of budget. Whether it's $20 or $25 a month or every couple months. There's many different options. It's just super helpful. So, yeah. And then, of course, just take a moment and dedicate all the goodness of our practice. So, what's called sharing the merit. That in Buddhism, there's this concept of merit that is gained by listening to the Dharma, by practicing, and so we share the merit, but we also receive the merit, the goodness of our practice, the goodness of hearing the Dharma, the benefits of practicing meditation. That we don't do this for ourselves alone, but for all living beings. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. And may all beings be free from suffering.